Okay, Madam Chair, we are now live.
Thank you. I call this meeting to order. This is the meeting of the Council Public Safety Committee. All members of the committee are present via Zoom. This is a remote or online meeting where all participants will be on a video or audio conference. We are holding this meeting remotely so everyone can participate safely while we are conducting business under a public health emergency. We appreciate your patience. Members of the public, city staff, and the media have the ability to view this meeting live through YouTube. This live stream can be accessed from most smartphones, tablets, or computers. For those watching on live stream, thank you for joining us. There was one written comment submitted for today's meeting, which was provided earlier. Members of the public will be able to address the committee if they have signed up for public comment per the rules published on the agenda last week. Members of the public will be moved from the Zoom waiting room into the meeting once we begin public comment. They will remain muted until they are called upon to speak, at which they will have 2 minutes to provide comment to the committee. After that, they will again be muted. We will start with public comment. We have one individual signed up to speak. Will the Zoom moderator, Mr. Moya, move the one member from the public who signed up to speak?
Madam Chair, yes, it's Mr. Patrick Barrett. Mr. Barrett, feel free to turn your video back on, unmute yourself, and was there any other instructions, Madam Chair?
Yes, I am going to give the ground rules before Mr. Barrett comments. The ground rules, our comments are to be addressed to the committee members only. Please keep your comments germane to the topic of today's meeting. Any destructive conduct or non-germane commentary will result in removal of the Zoom meeting. I also ask that we remain respectful for one another. So there will be a 2-minute time limit and the timer will start once you begin speaking. So Mr. Moya, since you've let him in, Mr. Barrett, I believe your time will start when you start speaking, and go ahead and unmute yourself.
Can you hear me? Okay, thank you all. My name is Patrick Barrett. I'm a community organizer here in the southeast area of town. I just want to say that I think that Jerry Bachich is doing a really fine job right now, really reaching out to the community with the new violence intervention program. So I just want to kind of let the city council know that me and other people are really looking forward to this new VIP program, and just want to say thank the council and the administration for those 2 new postings. So hopefully we can get this going, and we look forward to continuing working with Jerry on this violence intervention program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. I appreciate your comment.
Madam Chair, that was all the public speakers.
Thank you for that, Mr. Moya. I believe that some counselors do have some questions, and I believe we may have the chief or someone to answer some of the questions that counselors had. I don't know if you, Counselor Davis, do you have a question?
Thanks, Madam Chair. If you can hear me okay, I'm getting a little static on my end, but if you can hear me okay, I'll go ahead. Chief Medina, thanks for joining us, and I appreciate it. You and I had a chance to talk earlier today to just sort of catch up, but I wanted to take just a moment to dig in a little bit to the newest monitors report. I realize this is not on our agenda today, and I'm sure we'll have some more questions at council coming up, but I think there are some issues there that deserve some attention and follow up from the city council. I wonder if you can tell us a little bit. I mean, when we look at the latest monitors report that covers the first half of this year, I mean, quite frankly, the monitor just says we're taking steps backwards, or at least not making forward progress. And really concerning is that the process for force review, for example, in that entire process seems to be missing major instances of policy violations, to say the least. And then there's some other places that I'd like to follow up on some specific pieces. But can you give us, Chief, your sort of reaction or your analysis to what you see in response to what the monitor is sharing publicly about sort of what I would charitably call our sort of pause in progress for DOJ reform?
You know, Madam Chair, Councilor Davis, I think it's important that we look at this historically and we recognize where we've been coming. I think we made a lot of good progress early on. I think the mayor has been very open about this, that we started to make very good progress at the beginning of this administration. That it is evident in IMR, the early IMR reports with this administration. As far as up to IMR 11, we still were making positive steps forward. IMR 12 was the first indication that we had started to take back steps in our reform process. And during this time frame, the mayor did make the decision to replace the chief. I think it's important to recognize also that our use of force process that we updated is less than a year old. We have had the first 3 tiers of training, tier 1, 2, and 3, through this process, but we have not been able to complete the 4th tier of the training so that we could fully implement that use of force policy because of COVID. I think that we're planning and we're trying to figure out a way to implement this training, but the latest spike in the state of New Mexico isn't going to allow us to do that. I think as we move forward, we should view this in a series of different ways. First of all, it's the use of force policy itself and how supervisors and officers understand the use of force policy and the changes that we need the use of force policy to make. There was a new addition to the use of force policy, which is proportional and necessary, which was added, which is something new that we're going to have to deal with. And we're going to have to understand to develop the culture change that we need to develop within the department. Then there is the use of force review board, the Force Review Board, FRB, which had its struggles, which is in its very infancy of stages of being developed. The FRB started off with tactical activations, and those were the first set of cases that we reviewed, and it was just stating if the tactical activation was within policy. It wasn't looking at the use of force in of itself. I think that as that process developed right around an April timeframe, we really started to now looking at use of force cases. And I may be off on my time frame, so don't quote me because I did to get this request last minute, but we started looking at use of force cases and we quickly recognized that there was a growing curve with the use of force. And I think this goes back to just where the department is at a whole and making sure that we understand what direction we're going. There has been some criticisms towards cases that got through FRB, and those cases got through FRB because we have a video review board that missed some of the uses of force, which then caused an error to the investigator and the Force Review Board, which then led to a error in the previous chief answering and approving these use of force cases after they had gone through the Force Review Board. I think that it's important that we recognize that. I think that's why there has been some changes in the administration and that we need to be engaged. And where we sit right now is we recognize that there has to be some growth in the area of the Force Review Board. I am very engaged and understand that I need to work greatly with some of our city partners. I've been in great communication with Lindsay Van Meter, our city attorney assigned to the DOJ portion of our department, and working with her so that we could course correct some of the mistakes that were made in the past. One of the things that I've done early on is I think accountability and engagement have been a big piece of what was missing from the department earlier. I've been very engaged with the city attorney's office to make sure that we course correct this and we're making those changes. But there's also been the accountability factor where a force review case wasn't properly closed by the board. We did have to open some internal investigations on command level officers for not closing that case. So I think as we move forward, we'll continue to improve the process. I think we need to finish the training. DOJ, there are members who really liked the initial training and the way it rolled out in the adult learning module. But I also recognize that there are some areas where we could improve the training and bring additional components into the training. I also think that it's very important that we do not just move in the area of discipline. I think we need to be fair with our officers And the way I'm viewing it is very simple, is if it's a trend or it's something that we're seeing the whole department doing, that we need to correct that, either that culture or that training, to make sure that officers know their expectation so they're treated fairly, so we continue to have officers out willing to do their job and a strong level of morale amongst the officers. But at the same time, if it's individual and it's misconduct, we need to hold those individual officers accountable. And I think that's where the balancing act and the engagement of the chief needs to be at its highest level, so we could make sure that we continue to move this process forward. We are working on a written plan to correct some of the deficiencies that were noted, and we hope to have some kind of written plan ready for our next court hearing with DOJ, which is in December. So we do recognize that there are some corrections that we need to make. Like I said, we're early in the process and of the use of force policy, and we're going to continue to make evaluations, and hopefully some of the corrections we made in the past will get us to the point of where we need to be as a department.
Madam Chairman, I do, if I may, just one quick follow-up with the chief. Chief, thanks. I want to point, not to put you on the spot here, but I want to point to one quick thing, and then I'll make my minor speech, and we can move on. And maybe we can revisit some of this at the city council meeting. But one of the things that really stood out to me in the monitor's report was the statement that the force review board process, quote, fails to provide meaningful oversight for APD's use of force system. I think that's concerning that we're 5 and 6 years in now, and the monitor's assessment is that it's not working. Can you give us your assessment? Do you agree with the monitor, or does APD agree with the monitor that the force review process as it exists today is not providing meaningful oversight or information to you and your team about how we can do better?
I think that there are some changes that we've already made, and yes, the monitor is right. The force review board isn't functioning the way it needs to function. As of recent, we've had some changes that we're making. We feel that that we have to really get recommendations from the force review board and develop quicker special orders to correct any kind of activities or behaviors that are happening that we think are problematic. That's one of the things we've done. The other thing we've done is we're no longer concerned with the amount of training referrals that occur at the Force Review Board, where that was a concern in the recent past. My stance is that the number of referrals come out are the number of referrals, and we have to find a way to meet the requirements of getting these referrals trained and updated. And if it means us finding problem solving through giving the academy the resources necessary to get these referrals done, that's the answer. The answer isn't not doing as many referrals. And I think the biggest part that we're looking at is the fact that although we're 6 years into this settlement agreement, the fact is we're less than a year into this new developed force review board, and the role of this board is still being defined, and there is a learning curve that is going to occur with the force review board like this. We're not the only agency who's struggled. I think the previous administration struggled through this force review board for years. That's why we had to go back to the table. We had to redevelop a process of the use of force and an investigative process. And being less than a year into it, not being able to complete the training necessary for this process, it's slowing us down, and we are going to have to make modifications to this training process. But our minds are open to this. We recognize this, and we are working with the Department of Justice to develop a plan for it.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, let me conclude and just say, and thanks. And thank you, Chief. I know we'll have a chance to follow up and do more of this, but I really do appreciate you making time today. I know you weren't on our agenda, and I appreciate the chair giving us time, and I know other counselors have questions. But so let me just summarize my concern, and I appreciate I had the chance to talk to the city attorney earlier today. Let me just get my concern on the record, and we'll have a chance to talk about this more. I'm concerned that this report, that the city council, I spoke with our staff. I'm concerned that the city council learned about this report. I literally learned about this report with a call from order. The first time we saw this report or any mention of it, any of the concerns at all on behalf of the city was from Ms. Martinez at the DOJ. giving us notice that the report had been filed in the court. In the past, the administration has done a job of inviting us to exit interviews with DOJ, providing us with a draft of the city's response so that we had a chance to really look at these issues together. I think what's really concerning is that there appears to be something happening in the last year or so. I agree with the leadership change at APD. I'm a big champion of Chief Medina's approach to this process and the need for accountability. But it's very frustrating that a year ago, the mayor stood on the stage at the State of the City and said we were preparing to move to self-monitoring. During the same period, we learned that suddenly we were taking all these steps backwards, and that there were huge problems with the key component like force review. So I think we just have a lot to do also in the process of including the council. I'm not sure why in this instance that councilors were not included in exit interviews with DOJ that we were included on in the past. I think that would have helped us over the budget process understand where we needed to allocate resources. And that's what's really frustrating to me. I think it's clear from this report and from your statements and from what we're learning that the force review process it's too complicated. If you look at the chart of how a case moves from the field to final action to the chief, so many turns and different video review boards and detective review boards and oversight, and then you see more than 20 instances in the report that the monitor mentions where the union president or a union representative or someone used the union contract to actively interfere or to delay an investigation and to sort of run out the clock. It's concerning that there appear to be negotiations with the police union ongoing when we haven't completed the process, for example, for the guidelines on negotiations that's required by law. So I think they're just a place to hit a reset. I'm really excited to see new leadership at the police department. I love what you're doing in terms of putting accountability forward, but thanks, Madam Chair. I want to put on the record, frustrated, we're concerned, and I really want to see better engagement from the administration from the city attorney's office and APD when we know these issues are coming, especially would have been helpful as we were going through the budget process to determine how to allocate resources from the field to accountability and otherwise. So thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk more at council, but I appreciate it.
Madam Chair, if I just may add on one last portion is that's why as soon as I heard of the issue today, I think it's important that the chief of police themselves be here to answer these questions because of the magnitude of the question and the fact that the department needs a leader who's going to be in front answering these questions. And I think that's why there's been some change at the leadership at APD because we needed this. I'm fully committed to working with and communicating as much as possible with city council and making sure that they understand some of the directions we're moving. In some of the earlier meetings I've had with smaller groups related to some community issues, I mentioned earlier that I am working on trying to develop a template for a monthly report to City Council on some of our more frequently asked questions, and I'm hoping to have that in line by December. But just like today, if there's ever any questions, I'm more than happy to come answer those questions. And if I can't answer them, get the answers back to council, because I believe that as a police department and the chief, I need to make sure that I'm transparent with city council and I provide as many updates as possible. So this is something that I'll discuss with the city attorney and the city administration, and I'll see how we could get developing a process to get more information back to council. And like I said, I'm always open attending these meetings, even if it's last minute like today, and answering some of these questions. So thank you for the opportunity to acknowledge your questions and give an answer from the department and from the leadership at the top.
Thank you, Chief Medina. And now our city attorney has been invoked a few times during this conversation, so I'd like to go to him. Mr. Aguilar.
Thank you, Chair Sena and councilors. A couple of things. So just to make clear, the council gets involved and is aware of the report when the report is filed by the monitor, the same time as we are. The meetings I think that Councilor Davis had referred to regularly happen during the week of the site visit. Now we don't have those scheduled on the site visit this time around. So definitely we'll make sure to get that scheduled and that's included. I know that the DOJ and the monitoring team in our office was working really hard on, well, actually I say our office, but it was really the department was working very hard on scheduling this set of visits this time around, given the pandemic, but also given the lessons that we learned from the previous site visit earlier in the summer. So it's not just 1 week. I think that there are multiple meetings that are going to be scheduled over the course of the next 2 weeks. What I will say is that we're currently working not only with the department, but also with the monitoring team, as well as the Department of Justice this week. We're right in the middle of site visits, and the site visits are the time that we really use to get as much information as we can from the monitoring team to really flesh out those concerns, because until we understand where their perspective is, what those concerns are, we really won't have an idea or understanding of what those substantive issues are that we are working on. We're working, like the chief had mentioned, we're working on addressing those systems. I think the processes we learned, every system operates as it's designed. So our goal when we learned that we were having missteps, and in some cases serious missteps, we worked on addressing these processes, and we're right in the middle of those discussions. So we'll certainly keep the council up to speed on the development of those. And we're happy to sit down and to do our update sessions with the counselors. In the coming weeks, we'll work on scheduling that. But one thing to be clear, and it's something that our office has been very consistent in setting realistic expectations for the counselors, particularly when questions are asked about how long are we going to be in this. The hardest part of any process is culture change. Culture change is the hardest part, and we're right in the middle of it. And we've said that there are going to be hard days ahead, particularly as the department learns how to implement this new way of doing things. And that process takes time. And I appreciate the chief stepping in and really setting the clear message that the department is going to be holding itself accountable, and that they have all fully bought in to the process. And I don't want to say compliance, it's a transformation process of this department. And so these are not unexpected pitfalls. I think how we address those is what's important. And so that's where we're going to be working very hard with the department. We'll certainly keep you on the loop. And as the council knows, I think that Mr. Grego has been attending the regular monthly meetings of the parties. And so we're certainly welcome and looking to be able to increase that level of transparency, whether it's working with him directly or having him come to more meetings when we have those meetings with parties. We're happy to do that. But anyways, I wanted to make clear about the report and the content, but also about the path. And it's hard, and there are going to be hard days ahead. But our goal is to try to get through this, to have the best police department for the community.
Thank you for that, Mr. Aguilar. I have a few counselors lined up for some continued questions, so I'll go with Counselor Benton, Davis, then Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief, I do want to appreciate that, as Counselor Davis stated, the openness that you've always had before becoming acting chief, even to communications with the council. So I do appreciate that, and I appreciate the challenges that you're trying. I think I do appreciate the challenges you're trying to address. A couple of things. One was in the monitor's report, alluded to by President Davis, that that a union representative in one of the Forest Review interviews sort of took over and said, I can't remember their language exactly, but basically kind of interfered in that interview. What is the role of the union representative in that type of interview?
Madam Chair, Councillor Benton, I think that there's two things that I view upon this. First of all, what is the role of the union, which is representation and guidance for the member who's being interviewed. But I think there's also a learning process here for what is the role of our investigator to control this investigation. And that's the biggest thing that I'm focusing on. I can't control the behavior of union reps during a meeting because they're going to I think they're going to conduct themselves in a way that they're allowed to. And I think it's very imperative that we get our investigators to the point where they know how, what their role is and how they need to control these interviews to ensure that these interviews go forward in a proper professional manner that reflects well on the Albuquerque Police Department. So I think that, like I said, I'm looking at it in two different aspects. First of all, the role that the union representative plays in representing their membership at these meetings, providing them guidance and helping them, but not controlling the interview. And the fact that our investigators need to ensure that they know what their role is, and that's conducting an investigation and controlling the investigation and not letting it, and I think the word used was not letting it get hijacked from them, from membership from the union.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, just one more question. So also, we kind of two double-barreled news stories in this week, but the news story today with regard to overtime, there was an implication, at least by the reporter, and in that article, that aspects of the union contract prevent us from getting overtime under control. What are those aspects? Are you familiar with what kind of language is there? Maybe Mr. Aguilar would want to also weigh in on that.
Madam Chair, Councilor Benton, the two that come out the most in my mind during these situations is number one, comp time. We have individuals who are on call. So let's say, for example, a detective from homicide is on call. They're entitled to 8 hours of comp time a week for being on call. When a detective hits 150 hours of comp time, any comp time they turn in after that, per the CBA, they're paid out in overtime. And that's one of those issues where it's us being able to manage that. And one of the solutions that I have is that instead of paying out exactly at 150 hours, we're probably going to pay out at 180 hours. So once somebody hits 150 hours, we'll force them to start reducing that comp time below the 150 before we start paying overtime. That's one of the solutions that we're working on with that, and maybe a change with the collective bargaining agreement. The second area where the contract comes in and the collective bargaining agreement affects overtime is the fact that right now, if you have an officer who works 24 hours or 30 hours of their work week and take sick leave for 10, but on one of their days off, they go into work overtime, they'll be allowed to turn in the 10 hours sick, utilize the 10 hours sick, and the extra shift they picked up is now 10 hours of overtime. And that's something that we'd have to correct collective bargaining agreement wise, is that if somebody takes off during the course of their week, that any overtime they pick up would be paid at straight wages. But at the same time, we're kind of kicking the can down the road, because that right now, officers, when they retire, they're able to cash out their vacation. So does it make sense to have them use sick leave now at a lower pay rate or at their highest pay rate at the end of their career? So there are some tough decisions and questions that need to be asked in how we navigate through that process, and how we force people to use the time that they work instead of in lieu of sick or vacation. So those are some of the challenges that right off the top of my head I can think that we're faced with in overtime in the collective bargaining agreement.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, just a follow-up. So this is, also alluded to by President Davis, the administration, this administration has apparently entered into negotiations already with the union, and I guess the explanation that they haven't proceeded had to do with COVID. I'm not sure how that should affect it, but that does make it difficult for us as counselors, and this is the reason that I wanted us to convene the Committee on Guidelines for Negotiations. This is the place where the council has some role to talk about things that are important to our constituents and to the city and to ourselves as a branch of the city government. And so that has made it particularly tough, especially for me, because I get many questions from constituents about, approve or don't approve the new contract for APOA. And I'm going, I've had absolutely no role in the contract, and I'm not sure that I can at this point. And that's an issue that we're just going to have to contend with. But appreciate the answers, Chief, and anything we can do to help. I really see our work as cooperative, and we're kind of eyes and ears of constituents as well as other people who contact you directly. So we appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Next we have Councilor Davis, then Councilor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I realize I've already spoken, so I'll be brief so Councilor Jones can have the floor. But I just wanted to follow up to Mr. Aguilar, if you could just help me with process a little bit. I don't think you meant to say it this way. I don't want to be sure we didn't hear it in a different way. But you mentioned that the City Council gets the monitor's report at the same time you all do. But you don't mean to say, I don't think you meant to imply that the administration, the City Attorney's Office, APD, isn't aware of the monitor concerns before they're filed officially at court. I mean, in the past, councilors have participated and been invited to exit interviews. Your office has given us previews of what they're going to say and the city's response to those. I think we used to see drafts of those almost on a concurrent basis with the filings. I just want to be clear, you weren't suggesting that you don't have any idea what they're going to say before that shows up in court, right?
Chair Sena and Councilor Davis, I want to be very careful about how we respond to this, because there is the way the process is set up, there is opportunity for input before, but all that's confidential. So those drafts, the council has not seen drafts of any of those documents, and we typically get them a few weeks before and offer input. So we see the final product at the exact same time. So we don't know what generally that's going to look like. The exit interviews that you're talking about are typically handled on the week of the actual site visit. And that's where I'll have to go back and to see how that was scheduled. But if the council certainly was not invited or is not on the schedule now, I'll look into that and see how that happened and how that failed. But those interviews, absolutely, the council has been regularly invited. And I know we actually usually, and this is where I was going, usually there are sessions set up that the DOJ sets up with us and with the monitoring team for any counselor who's interested, wants to know more about that, a particular paragraph or a particular initiative that we're working on addressing. And I think the way that this process, meaning this site visit, was scheduled this time was slightly different. I think what they were trying to do was juggle schedules and make it so that each member of the team was not having overlapping Zooms for the whole week where you're not having breaks for anything. And so I think that's why it's been staggered out. But let me follow up more on that and see where we're at. And certainly the intent is not to never to not involve the council in these issues. Or in those interviews or those process, but I actually, was a little behind in the scheduling of the site visits. So I did not realize that if those individual sessions were not set up this time. This is the first I'm hearing about it, and I'll find out why and see. And certainly we can work on scheduling time because they're all virtual. So I'm sure the monitors and the DOJ would be happy to sit down as well. And, frankly, they're regularly, as we are, very active in soliciting and getting the council's input, because this body has been critical in helping the success of the process to date and will be pivotal in the success moving forward as well.
Thank you, Mr. Aguilar. I appreciate that. And I'm not suggesting that it was anything intentional, but I do think it's important. I think myself and a number of counselors have been over at the DOJ office in the past for these interviews and your office in the past for these interviews. I think we had no idea that there was a site visit in July that would have given us the opportunity to ask those questions. But that really is the place where we all get the opportunity to really hear what what they're seeing and what they're going to put in their report. Now, the details really matter and what final cases they want to list in detail are different, but it has in the past been very, very useful. You're right, counselors have been included. We'd like to be sure that they're included again on a regular basis. I'm not sure why that broke down, but it certainly would be helpful. And again, we go back to before you were our city attorney under the old administration, when Dr. Ginger presented to this city council 5 years ago, asked point blank who is ultimately responsible for funding and implementing these changes. And he said the city council. It's up to us at the end of the day. If the administration doesn't implement the changes, it's up to us to pass a law to make it happen. And it's up to us to fund it. And I think it's just frustrating that with what we've heard in progress from ECs regarding APD progress from the city attorney's office, from the administration, and from APD over the course of the year was that everything was going great and we're making big progress and everything. We're moving towards compliance and self-monitoring, and that doesn't appear to be the case. And it feels like we're 6 months behind. And that's what I wanted to express today. I know we've taken a lot of time, but I think I appreciate it. It'd be great to get counselors back included in that process again, as we used to be and certainly need to be. So thank you. I appreciate your commitment to that.
And Madam Chair, Councilor Davis, yeah, absolutely. And just to be clear again, I think we're getting a couple of different things or events mixed up. Like each monitoring is for a specific period, right? Each IMR is for a specific period. So we are 6 months behind on where we're at now. So this monitoring report is covering the progress that was made during that period from like starting January 1st thing till the end of the summer. So typically those meetings that you're referring to never happen before those reports come out. It's always after. It's always once the report comes out, then the monitoring team has their site visit, and then that's typically when we go through and discuss those concerns that are raised in those IMRs. We're obviously doing the best we can to try to keep up. We would like to be able to, to move forward as quickly as possible. But again, it's, this is a process, and like any lawsuit or like any change, right? There are going to be highs and lows, and the goal is really to ensure that we're not getting too high or too low, but also making sure we're learning as much as we can from those missteps so those improvements can be made. But we'll certainly make sure we do the best to keep you up to speed.
Mr. Aguilar, let me just be clear though what I'm talking about. The last one of these I participated in was about this time last year, and it was for the site visit at the end of the last monitoring period before they wrote the next report that came out roughly at the end of the year. And it was literally with the monitors team where they said, I was at the academy today and I talked to a person who said this, and I visited the Southeast Area Command and I did this. Those are the exit interviews I'm talking about. They're live feedback we get that gives us a preview of the issues they're concerned about. Also, of sort of between the IMR and pre-hearing sort of meetings that happen for agencies' response in terms of our response to their report. But counselors and participators prior to this administration and in the first half of in those sort of real-time meetings when they're in town. I realize the last one was by Zoom. I just want to be sure that we can use in that again, because by the time we get all this information 6 months too late, we've either invested 6 months of time into a process that's not working, or if we are doing something really well, we should all be able to share and be ready to celebrate that. So all I'm asking, I know we can get back to that. It's just it's frustrating to see that we took some steps back and it's kind of.
All right, we're going to move on to Councilor Jones. Thank you for being so patient, and then I'll bring it back to myself.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I must agree with Council President Davis. It has been months since I've had any notice of any meetings that the council could attend to see what's going on with the monitor. So I would also welcome that. It really helps to hear and be able to ask questions in real time. So whatever we can do, I know we have really tough situation now, but it would be very much appreciated by most of us. And then moving on to the question I've been waiting for, Madam Chair. Thank you. Chief, I have a question of you, please. And first of all, thank you for being here. I know you're busy. I know there's a lot going on and life is crazy, but I know we're all concerned, immensely concerned about the violent crime that's going on in the city, the lack of enough officers, I believe, from what I've been reading and seeing. But most what we face day to day in all of our district is the traffic, the speeding, and the horrific accidents and deaths that we're seeing because of it. Not just the people who are speeding, but also the innocent people who are getting hurt too. We have two major streets in my district, and I'll just go ahead and be selfish about this. Tramway and Montgomery have speeding on 40-mile-an-hour streets that is in excess of 70 miles an hour constantly. This is not a rare occasion. I would like to know and see what kind of plan is going to be put in place by APD to stop this and stop killing our innocent citizens. This should not be happening. Laws are the laws are the laws, and I cannot understand why this happens constantly, and we don't seem to be able to do anything about it. Chief, do you want to answer now, or do you want to try to put something together and get back to me at the council meeting next week?
Madam Chair, Councillor Jones, I do have a response because we have been working with several councillors on this, and there are some things that we're working to move forward. One of the things we've done is we are working on the calendar of where officers are going to be conducting enforcement. They did have a draft for me this week because I would like to provide council with a list of these are the days that the main streets in your council districts are going to get specialized attention from the traffic section. The next thing that we're looking at is we're looking at developing a group that's going to really focus on this traffic problem, because it is the #1 concern that we're getting. We have not only drag racers, we have people who like burn out in the middle of streets. We have loud muffler problem. So we're looking at this from all angles. We have met with some of the members of council. Some of the things that have already come out of this meeting is Damon Martinez already did work. We're looking to increase penalties for vehicular homicide when it looks like drag racing is involved. This is something that would take a state legislative change in state law. So we do have a draft on this that we're already working on. I got an update from Damon yesterday, and we're hoping that we could get that moving forward in the state legislature. We are looking at some of the ideas we had is how do we go beyond just testing for admissions and testing for noise. That's something that some of the counselors are working with us on. We are looking for an advertising educational campaign in which we want to tie the name of a victim to the advertising campaign and say, this is about so-and-so, so that we bring awareness to the community of how these drag racing incidents over the year and the loss of life have affected us as a community. So there is a plan that we're working on that includes everything from more enforcement, devoting resources, knowing where these resources are going to be at certain times, all the way on through education, through increased penalties. And looking at it administratively through programs like the admissions testing. So we do have a plan. We can at the next council have somebody come in and specifically address what we're doing as a whole, but those are just some of the things that have already come about from our meetings and trying to move in the direction of addressing some of these traffic problems that our city's facing. But I 100% acknowledge and I agree with you that traffic has become our #1 complaint that we're seeing as of late.
If I may, Madam Chair, thank you, Chief. That was all swell and good, and I appreciate the mufflers, and I appreciate the attempt to stop the drag racers. However, I'm talking about day-to-day neighborhood streets, arterials that speed limits of 40 miles an hour, routinely, traffic going at 50, 60, 70 miles an hour, and I have not seen a traffic officer on these streets. I see sheriff's officers on the county streets, and they almost always have 2 or 3 or 4 cars stopped. And I think the biggest issue we have right now is we are not enforcing simple laws, and I don't understand why that's not happening. It's one thing to have a TAC plan for the big things. Drag racing is horrid, it's awful, but it doesn't kill the kids going to school in the morning because they are rear-ended or smashed, or they themselves are running into another car, because it is common practice to go these speeds on our community streets. Chief, it goes beyond, you have a great plan there, But let's start at the basics, and that is, why are we not picking up and ticketing and then enforcing those tickets? Because if someone is doing that regularly, they have more than one ticket. Why are we not working on enforcing the law? And I'm going to be really silly about this, but the law is the law is the law. And if we are not enforcing our small laws, so to speak, how can we enforce the larger ones? And I remember New York decades ago. How did they start enforcing the laws and getting the crime off the streets? They ticketed the people for jaywalking in New York City and went from there, and it worked. I don't believe, Chief, that we can overlook these, what we consider to be little infractions of the law, because once you get away with a little infraction over and over, it grows. So sorry to preach to you, Chief, but I think the citizens have had about enough of this, and I would like to hear a good plan on what you're going to do. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chief.
Madam Chair, Councillor Jones, I will, for the next council meeting, we will have prepared, and I don't want to take away from the hard work that our traffic section has done. They do issue every week hundreds of traffic citations, and they are out there. And I will have them bring a report on all the citations that they issued and kind of explain their activities. We are still short. I would like to see our traffic section eventually double, but in terms of where we are right now, we're still looking to grow our traffic section. But like I said, they do great work. They are issuing hundreds of citations every week, and we'll get some of that information back to council. And hopefully with this calendar, once it's finalized and corrected, we'll be able to show council where we're at each week enforcing these laws. I do know they were on Montgomery yesterday, because I did actually receive a question from the other side on how somebody could handle and address one of the citations they received. So I'll see if I could just, in the meantime, get some numbers from what occurred on Montgomery yesterday. I think it was about the 1200 block is the information that I received.
If I may, Madam Chair, and Chief, if I could, would you please see if you can get some information on whether the courts are enforcing these? Because as I see it, people have no repercussions from their speeding tickets. Isn't there a point where we can take their license? Isn't there some repercussion for speeding and getting ticketed over and over? Or is it kind of like everything else? Well, we don't have time to deal with it. The courts don't deal with it. It just keeps happening and everyone knows it doesn't matter.
You know, I'd have to get some updated information from the Madam Chair, Councillor Jones. I'd have to get some updated information from the courts on how this is being addressed and how the impact of COVID has gone through this. I do know that a lot of times first-time violations, the one first time is supposed to go through traffic arraignment, and a lot of times they will give them the option of going through a driver's improvement school. But beyond that, and what penalties are, I'd have to ask the courts to see how they're currently addressing this. But I will put that to our list, and I'll see if we can't get somebody from the courts to give us some information on that.
Thank you, and Chief. And then I promise, Madam Chair, I will stop. And I would like to know, if we have these rules in place and we do have an ability to do this, how often do we do it? I'd like to see some numbers on what really happens. How many tickets do you actually get before something happens? Or do we just wad them up and throw them away or keep them in our glove compartment? Because that's what I'm seeing from the results that we're getting right now. So thank you, Chief. Thank you, Madam Chair, for indulging me.
Yes, thank you. And I do really appreciate you, Chief, and our continued conversations to really brainstorm the issue of speeding and drag racing, as well as the muffler sounds that we've been having with fellow counselors and getting those updates. So I hope to provide some more updates to council, to everyone on that. But one thing before I get to Councillor Bassan's question real quick, I just wanted to note that having someone close within our staff's family having gotten a ticket, it's being enforced for sure. That individual was followed up on when they didn't meet all of the hours on their driver's education program. So it is followed up on based on my secondhand evaluation of that person's experience. So I do just want to say thank you for that. But with that, I'll take Councillor Bassan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Going with what Councilor Jones was saying, Chief, if we can, when you get back to us with the presentation for the full council, I know we've been working and we've heard the plan and I'm really excited about it. I can't wait to hear more and continue doing that. If we can add on there kind of some dates, not necessarily hard dates, but just when do we expect the implementation of the plans that are kind of being brainstormed right now on that list? That would be amazing. And then, Madam Chair, I was talking with you earlier, but also I know with Councilor Davis, I'm wondering if we can maybe, while the chief is here too, we can just have a brief, like maybe someday we can have Sarah Masick come and do a presentation to the full council to show kind of an overview of the Peregrine system. I think that sounds like a tool that maybe the council and the public would benefit from. I'm not saying divulge all of the secrets for the capabilities that APD, hopefully if you guys have the magic, but at the same time, I think that would be really beneficial if we can do that. And I would like to request that we can get that scheduled as soon as she's able to present and as soon as we can put that on the calendar, please.
Madam Chair, Councillor Bazan, yeah, as soon as we get the plan, I'll have them start adding timeframes and dates into it. I'm going to be very open and honest with council. We are going through a rash of COVID amongst our officers in the department. And I'm telling you, we're just trying to get through the next few weeks. We've had several officers test positive. We do have a number of officers on our quarantine list. We have had to ask our investigative units to assist us with calls for service. So we're asking the public and council and everybody to bear with us these next few weeks because COVID hasn't just hit the community, it's hit the police department. And we're trying to make sure that we continue to move in the right directions, but I also want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that is safe for our officers. So bear with us. We got a lot on our plate right now because this COVID issue is it's really taken us and it's taking up a lot of our time in trying to do the tracing and making sure that we're getting all the individuals involved tested and making sure that them and their families are safe. So we will get these to you, but like I said, I recognize we're a little delayed right now with some of the stuff going on with COVID.
Chief, thank you for that update, and our thoughts and prayers are with those officers that are being impacted by COVID, as is with the rest of our community. Especially, that's why it was really important for us to get this update that's on our agenda today. I don't want to stray too much more from our agenda, but my questions were really relating to the auditor's report on overtime. And I know Councillor Benton brought this up, but I think that it would be to the benefit of all councillors if my questions are reserved to a full council meeting. And I appreciate Mr. Bramlett for being here today to possibly give that update. But I think I'll just have my questions reserved to the full council and circle back to Mr. Bramlett on a possible presentation during council meeting on Monday. So thank you so much, Chief. I think with that, we're going to move on to our agenda items if no one else has any other questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, first up on the agenda is the COVID-19 enforcement updates presentation by the administration.
Council, this is Deputy Chief Gallegos, Fire Marshal for Albuquerque Fire Rescue. I'm doing the presentation for the public health order compliance and enforcement efforts that's we've been doing over the last, 6 months now, starting in, I want to say, March. So again, this is something that's everybody from different city departments have been working on for a long time, and every single one of our members have been doing a really good job of trying to communicate and enforce and hopefully get the community to comply with the public health order. So next slide, please. So the goals of this, the public health order team are, again, public safety is number one, education, and then, the overall goal is compliance. That's what we're looking for from the community and from everybody. Our direction is we take from the New Mexico Public Health Order and the City of Albuquerque Declaration of local emergency. So that's where we're getting our direction, and that's how what we're trying to educate and have everybody comply with in the community. Next slide, please. So the team is made up of Albuquerque Fire Marshal's Office, Environmental Health Departments, Code Enforcement Division, City Security, Albuquerque Sunports, City Park and Rec, Albuquerque Police Department, and then State Police assists us as well. Next slide, please. So as you can see, here's a picture of the map, the ArcGIS map. That's a program that we use to track all the interactions that we've had from March until November. We've got a couple media inquiries that's continued to ask me of, what zip code do we want to focus on? And as you can see, we're not focusing on any specific zip code. We're focusing on the city of Albuquerque. So this is a One Albuquerque initiative that's, the entire city has to comply. And we want everybody to be safe in the city of Albuquerque. So next slide, please. So the public health order communication with businesses and individuals, each department is sharing responsibilities, but some of them have different responsibilities. The fire marshal's office, initially our main responsibility was occupancy loads, getting out there and setting the occupancy load for all the stores and restaurants, so that they understood how many people can be inside their building, and then also social distancing, outdoor tents, face covers, special operation, hours of operation for high risk. Environmental health is indoor and outdoor dining, grocery stores, responsibilities, face covering, and then special hours. Code enforcement helps across the board with everything, face covering, social distancing, occupancy loads. Same thing. City security is mainly social distancing, I should add it, and face covering. And then City Park and Rec, again, their personnel help educates, but really call us on if they see any issues at any of the city parks. So, and then they will, again, communicate with teams that go out there and practice at, say, baseball fields. And if they're not following the public health order, then they call out APD or state police or one of the team members, so that we can help them educate. So, and then the Sunports, again, their main thing is handing out face covers and educating people that are coming into our city. So next slide, please. So public health order focus and priorities. Again, occupancy loads, restaurants, breweries, distilleries, 25% inside, 75% outside, places of worship, 40%, grocery stores, all retail stores, 25%, cleaning and disinfecting of specific areas, such as the keypads where grocery stores, or chairs and tables at restaurants, and then also social distancing. We give a lot of the instruction to the Walmarts and all that, where they were giving one direction through aisles. Those are things that we're trying to educate those businesses at first of how to do this social distancing. And then mask gathering, face covering when in public areas. The only time they don't have to wear it is whenever they're eating, drinking, or given direction by a healthcare provider. All departments have face covers that we can hand out to businesses. So there are people a lot of times that during our blitzes that we'll go over later on, there's a lot of people that didn't have masks or just asked for some extra ones. So we want to provide that to them. We want to help them out in complying with this public health order. Some of the other things is closing by 10 o'clock for restaurants, breweries, retail, and then the special hours of operation for our high risk citizens. We want those to be in place, and we want to help out our high risk citizens. Next slide, please. Public health, environmental health has been very helpful and helping out with all the restaurants, grocery stores. As you can see, they've sent out over 4,000 permit letters and emails to permitted facilities throughout the city, helping out with education on public health order and COVID safe practices, created virtual inspections, making sure that all these businesses continue to run and get the inspections that they need, providing guidance on cleaning and disinfecting. They've created a red light, green light, yellow light reports to help businesses to keep track of businesses, translating educational material, which you'll see on the next slide, to different languages. So that's all, it's just not in English, it's in English, Spanish, and any other language that we can translate these flyers to. creating COVID compliance inspection reports, continuing education for pools, food facilities of the public health order, and then COVID safe practices guidelines. And then continued education for customer health protection division staff on data needs and then tracking. And last is continuing coordination enforcement efforts with the state's partners, New Mexico Environmental Health Department and the DOH. Next slide, please. All right, these are just some of the flyers that the departments in the city of Albuquerque, each department has contributed and created as many slides and informational slides as possible so that we can educate the public and they have a document in front of them to help guide them through this this pandemic. You know, it's very dynamic. The public health order, as you guys know, as everybody knows, is that it's changing all the time. So we go out and we try and update all of these flyers as much as we can, and then we do another round to as many businesses as possible and hand out these flyers so that they have the most up-to-date information. Next slide, please. And yet, Environmental Health has done a great job on their website, especially with the restaurants, of helping them have the information needed to succeed in their business. Next slide, please. The next few slides are all the numbers as far as what we've been currently doing with the public health order. This is the interactions that we have had with the entire team. So since total complaints that we've received in different areas, over 1,700, total compliance interactions, over 6,500, total warnings that we've given out or notices of violation, over 700, and then citations, 13. Next slide, please. Again, we keep keeping track of different types of compliance issues that we've been having, or just interactions, which is face covering, occupancy load, distance, social distancing, outdoor and indoor seating, and then other interactions that we've had, such as businesses calling us up and asking us, where can we get more face coverings? You know, and we try and send them to the right area and give them a point of contact, or where can they get money to help them, you know, put up an outdoor tent or any situation like that. So next slide, please. Business types. Again, initially we were trying to keep up with the different business types. So smoke shops, food service establishments, nursing and assisted living homes, massage parlors, furniture stores, clothing stores. Again, it's a wide range, and we were trying to keep track of all the different stores that we were trying to go to. Again, you can see that the most prevalent one is the food service establishments and grocery stores. Next one, please. All right, and then now it's breaking it down. This is a slide sheet that's my office keeps track of with the help of all the other divisions. Of each department has different totals that we continually work on, and they send it to us on a weekly basis, and I update the spreadsheets, and then we put all these totals in. So fire marshal's office, APD. Next slide, please. Environmental Health Department and code enforcement. Again, each of them have different interactions, whether that be by email or going into each department. And each of us have different number of staff members available to go out there and to educate and make sure that we do get compliance from everybody. My office has around 20. Environmental Health has around 7, code enforcement's around 6. So each of us have different numbers. Next slide, please. Some ports, again, their major thing of handing out face covers, which again, they're looking at around 75,000 face covers that they've handed out so far, which is an amazing number. They've been doing a great job. So I appreciate all their support. Next slide, please. And then APD dispatch and 311, they've been doing a great job of taking in these calls and sending them to our departments, whatever specific departments could answer the question and get somebody out there to whatever the business or the complaints or concern is. So whether it be to the fire marshal's office or environmental health or code enforcement, you know, APD dispatch and 311 have worked greatly with us and helped us address all the concerns that the citizens do have or businesses do have. Next slide, please. So a lot of questions that we always come up about citations. Who can issue a citation? The only division that can issue a citation is Albuquerque Police Department and the state police. So, and then that's the it's a petty misdemeanor is what it is, and this is what APD is and state police go off of. So go next slide, please. The steps that's for businesses and individuals that the team continually works off of is the first thing, like I said, is education and compliance communication. You know, the team continues to go out, and we want to make sure that the businesses and individuals are doing their parts in slowing down the spread of COVID-19. So that's the first and foremost thing that we want to do. The next thing is the warnings and notices of violation. The team is doing spot checks on a continual basis. All of us are still doing our primary job, but then still enforcing and educating and making sure that we're doing compliance checks with all these businesses on the public health order. And then we're also taking, communicating with 311 or the APD's non-emergency number and addressing the concerns from citizens if they have them, and go in and check with all these businesses. And then last but not least, if needed, we do have no problem in citing individuals or businesses. So if business is found to be blatantly going against the public health order or the City of Albuquerque declaration, we'll call out APD or state police and issue them that citation. So next slide, please. Right, and so this is some of the things that we've done over the last couple weekends, public health order enforcement blitzes. That's over the October 14th, the weekends. We went out over the weekend and had over 1,400 interactions, compliance interactions. We gave out over 300 notice of violation or warnings, and then citations we issued 9. Party intervention team, again, one of the biggest spreads of the COVID right now is large gatherings at private locations, which is something that's hard for us to gets information on, which again, where APD comes in with their party intervention teams, going in and breaking up those parties and giving that homeowner information and giving them a notice of violation. The last weekend, the October 29th, 239 interactions, 180 warnings or notice of violation, and then 7 notice of violation from the party intervention team. The party intervention team is done on a continual basis every weekend. So this is done by, they patrol neighborhoods and they take inquiries and concerns from 242 cops. So that's where that's doing. I know that's APD is working hard on trying to get to as many of these parties and these concerned citizens, or addressing a lot of the concerns that the citizens call in. So I appreciate all their hard work on that. Next slide, please. So, and again, that was trying to make it quick for you all. Thank you for your time. Any questions?
Thank you for that, Deputy Chief. Councilors, any questions before I go to mine? Councilor Benton?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Chief. So with regard to the gatherings, right, we've had some in our neighborhood, and I believe, if I remember right, the people who made the complaint called 311. Would they be better off calling 242 cops on a large gathering?
Madam Chair, Councilor Benton, yes, that would be, if they do have for a large gathering at a private location, it'd be better for them to call 242 cops. That way APD can create a incidents and they can send units over there as soon as they can. Because especially after hours, again, most of the city departments don't have personnel available, and we do have people on call, but APD can get there a lot faster than we could.
Thank you, Chief. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilors, any questions before I go to mine? All right. Deputy Chief Gallegos, I know there's also Dr. Mark Demena is also on here, and I know that this is a big collaborative effort. But without having a public health department here, I'm going to go ahead and ask you the questions. And if Dr. Mark Demena is available to answer some of these questions, I would love for him to do that as well. But my questions really are, when evaluating the information from the New Mexico Department of Health and kind of seeing the site visits and concerns that all of the departments, whether it's yours or code enforcement, are going out, what has been some of the cases or the reasons why, I pull up the information and it says the interactions have been through varying things, whether it's shopping, whether it's going to restaurants. And I saw that the largest, as you said, frequency was in the food service establishments. So I'm just curious, is that just through random site visits? Is this through calls? Is this through cross-referencing from the New Mexico Department of Health? How much is that interaction between one another?
Madam Chair, Council, I want to say it's because environmental health has done a lot of proactive reaching out to all of these restaurants and communicating to them on what their responsibilities are. So again, we get communication from the restaurants because they want to stay open. They're hurting right now, and they want to do what they want to get ahead of as much as they could. Obviously, cold winter's coming, so they want to know how they can keep their tents warm, but still stay within the guidelines set forth by the public health order. And environmental health has again done a great job of reaching out to them as much as possible on, so that one, they don't get in trouble, and two, so that they can stay open or do whatever they can to keep their business open. So, but I will turn it over now to Deputy Director Amena, answer any or to elaborate on that as well.
Thanks, Chief. Madam Chair, I think one of the things that's been very much in focus throughout all of this is just the way that restaurants have been at the middle of everything that's come out from the governor and a lot of public perception. So we're kind of walking two sides of that line. One, as Chief mentioned, we want to make sure that the restaurants understand exactly what's being asked of them. We have a strong relationship with food service, restaurants and grocery stores anyway, pre-COVID. And that's really the relationship that we try to nurture, one in which, when our inspector shows up, they're being treated as a trusted source for how to do things safely, rather than just being the black hat walking in and, busting somebody's, family business or looking for trouble. So this model that we've adopted of compliance assistance, where we really want them to understand what we're asking them to do, what they're supposed to be doing, how they can best comply. That's why we've been talking for the last several months about education so much. It's much more important to us that when our inspector leaves, that the facility continues to do the right thing, continues to do the safest thing for people coming in and for their own staff, rather than us just being able to bust somebody while we're there. The nature of the public health orders that have come out from the state have had so much variation for restaurants and grocery stores since the beginning, that there's been a little bit of difficulty in terms of keeping up with what's being asked for, and understanding exactly what those subtleties are meant to mean. So there's more need for education there. But the other side of that line is that there's also much more opportunity for us as government agencies to spot places where they're not doing a good job, and in particular where the public can spot things that they know shouldn't be going on. And I think if you look at the trends and the data that Chief presented, going back earlier in the summer when things first started to reopen, around Memorial Day, beginning of June, we were getting a lot of complaints about places allowing indoor dining or having above occupancy, or the tables were too close together. I mean, these are all things that we're looking for. And often when we go there, more often than not, the facilities were actually doing exactly what they should be doing. And there was a public perception that maybe that wasn't what it should be. You all have probably had that experience. I know I've had that experience. If you drive by a patio, it tends to look more packed than it's supposed to be, because we're all getting very used to seeing a group of people and having all the alarm bells sound. But as we've gone in and looked at those, and I will stop and kind of take a quick count of the patio myself and just get a sense of where they're at. More often than not, the tables are 6 feet apart. The party sizes are restricted to what they're supposed to be. Even when you can see people talking from one table to the next, I mean, that's within compliance. So there's just been some adaptation on the part of the public as well to understand what's going on. I don't I don't think we'd want you to be under the perception that restaurants or grocery stores are doing a bad job. The reason we paid so much attention, as I just said, some of it is that we're doing our best to work with them and make sure that they understand, because there's so much in focus on this. And we know these are a lot of the areas where people are really interested in seeing compliance and being able to get a little bit of normalcy out of what we're left with. So we want to make sure that that's done safely. So we're giving a lot of attention there as much as we can.
Yeah, I absolutely appreciate that, and know that keeping up in real time with information, especially in a language that the community also is proficient in as well. We've been doing our town halls in both Spanish, Vietnamese, sometimes Chinese, to get the updates out there, because it is ever so changing. And I do appreciate that, and know that a lot of this is part of that education to communities and our businesses, and hopefully that everyone is in compliance. And I'm not saying that, this is, we're trying to go out there to get everyone in a gotcha moment, and that hopefully that everyone is aware of what those standards are. My question really comes from some of the reports and from community members. Even yesterday at an FGO meeting, public comment was given where a cook was told to continue to work, or that they were fired, or there were reports that people weren't in compliance of even the federal mandate of offering the Family First Coronavirus Paid Sick Leave. So, with those reports, I know that we've been trying to refer them out to the state, and even the mayor offered a hotline. How are you receiving those reports?
Madam Chair, thanks for that question. That's something that we are very concerned with as well. We actually just had a similar complaint come in, I believe last week, where employees were still coming to work, trying to keep the business open, because they felt like they had no other choice. There weren't enough staff in order to keep their doors open, and they didn't feel like they could afford to be closed anymore. As sympathetic as we are to that situation, we can't have sick staff reporting to work, because that's what propagates a pandemic. And it puts every customer that comes through at risk as well. So it's a big concern of ours. I think a couple of months ago now, I know Madam Chair, but other councilors, if you don't know, environmental health is very plugged into the city's Joint Information Center. We're actually sort of taking the lead on communications. This has been very much a campaign of information since the beginning, just getting people to understand what's important. One of the pieces that we put together a couple of months back was deliberately intended towards workers' rights. We actually put that out in English, Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese, and even Dene, to make sure that employees going to work understood what their rights are. They are not supposed to be forced to work if they're sick. They are not supposed to be forced to work without proper protective equipment that's needed in order to keep them safe. And the state OSHA is investigating, and now actually state OSHA operates all the way from employee rights, workers' rights, all the way through operations. And we coordinate really well with the Environment Department. The State Environment Department houses their food safety program as well as OSHA, so we regularly work with them even in normal times. And we've been trying to make sure that we're coordinating. If we are catching those complaints about workers being forced to work when they're sick, or proper protections not being put in place, we will investigate that from environmental health's perspective to make sure we're out there and looking for those operations to be done the right way. And we will simultaneously also report that to OSHA ourselves. Even though we've told the employee, you can report this to OSHA, we do want OSHA to hear firsthand what's going on and be able to do their own investigation. But we're not going to leave to chance that some employee maybe got up the courage once to tell us, but isn't about to do it again. Didn't find the experience, gave them any peace of mind, and now they're afraid to tell the state. So we just report it to the state for them and make sure that we're coordinating any response. While there are a lot of various weights of tool available to us when we're talking about compliance for this, environmental health's perspective on this has been since the beginning, if we are finding non-compliance when it comes to COVID safe practices, which includes excluding sick workers, we will close the facility. And if we have to, we will suspend their permit until they can prove to us that they can operate safely. The current food ordinance allows us to do that for a public health hazard. COVID is clearly, in every sense of the definition, a public health hazard. So if we find places aren't operating within the parameters of safety, we'll just immediately act on that. We haven't seen a lot of deliberate non-compliance with that. We know it's out there. I think that's probably more of a reporting issue that we'd like to see more of. But we also understand that people are in many cases afraid to report that. And, you know, seeing where people have been laid off and businesses have gone under across the country, it's very easy to understand why. Some people make the choice to go to work even when they feel that they're not safe, because they fear that the option is there won't be work to go back to the next day. So it's definitely a sticky issue for us, but we're trying to make sure that we're hitting it from all sides.
Dr. Domena, I really appreciate that. And I know, you know, almost every business that I've talked to, they really are trying to do what best they can to navigate that space, to navigate COVID, as we all are. And the bad actors that we're referring to are very small, and small numbers. But I just want to make sure that really that education is out there, that, you know, as we're navigating a public health emergency, it's really critical that everyone understands that it's best to really stay home and go out when you absolutely have to. And I know that these businesses are still navigating that as well. And, you know, we try to go and enjoy food, you know, by takeout to a lot of these restaurants, especially if they're doing best practices. You know, my family are always trying to do that in support of those businesses. But, you know, just coming across from a lot of community members now with upticks, you know, in the thousands for our entire state, it's more important now than ever to really communicate that with our communities. And I hope to actually have another town hall to really distinguish what it is between self-isolation and quarantine. There's been a big conversation within many communities without that understanding of, yes, I'm at home, I've tested positive, but also knowing that they need to stay away from general, you know, areas that the rest of their family is also going to. That's kind of what I'm hearing on my end. And it's been very concerning in trying to get that information out to all communities, while also saying, you know, this is also your rights. If you've tested positive, you shouldn't be at work. So I really appreciate that update. And counselors, if you have any other questions, we can move on to the next agenda item. Thank you, Dr. Domena and Deputy Chief Gallegos. I really appreciate you both being here and really helping the community understanding, you know, the changing public health orders and trying to keep our community safe. So thank you. Next on the agenda is the Violence Intervention Program presented by APD.
Yeah, that's the start. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Madam Chair and the City Council, for having the VIP program staff here in order to update you all on our program to reduce gun violence. So the Violence Intervention Program, I'm the program manager. My name is Jerry Bachicha. I come with a background from working at both the state and the county to reform juvenile justice systems. And I've worked mainly in the realm of, as you can imagine, the youth in our communities, not only in Albuquerque, but all the way across the state. And so I have a really great staff that is also going to talk to you today. So I'm going to go through this kind of quickly so that we can be open to all of your questions at the end of the presentation. The Violence Intervention Program, to me, has three large overarching strategies that I've kind of noted on this first slide. There is a public health component strategy to reduce gun violence. There are critical shifts to how the police department does its law enforcement. And this enforcement would be under the category of focused deterrence. And that VIP is all in. That means that from the grassroots advocates on the ground in Albuquerque, that are doing racial equity work and other types of work to make sure that our communities are safe, clear to all of the community-based organizations that do services and help our communities and their families make it through times like the pandemic and other difficult situations in their lives, to all the multiple law enforcement agencies like ATF, DEA, FBI, and the DA's office. We all have to be all in and on the same page as we move forward with the violence intervention program for it to work. So if you can go to the next slide. So there are many ways that APD is changing the way they address gun violence under the auspices of the VIP program. The VIP program is both law enforcement and community partnership to reduce gun violence. So this falls under the community policing strategies. And yet I would say that it takes them one step further. It's much more transparent, and it's literally working arm in arm at times through some of the components that we work with, and Commander Langwood, we'll talk about that in a minute. Public health strategies are critical and a cornerstone to the way that this program works. Without the public health strategies, anything that the law enforcement work does will not be sustained. So sustaining the success of reducing gun violence is basically going to happen only with public health strategies in the community, and they have to be multiple, and they have to be individualized and customized to each community within Albuquerque. Narrowly focused law enforcement strategies are very important to this process, and this is a shift from actually sending a lot of police officers into communities when there is an increase in gun violence in order to reduce that gun violence. This strategy actually is a focused deterrence approach, which addresses the less than 1% of the population of Albuquerque that drives most of the gun violence in Albuquerque. So it takes a lot of work to identify who that population is, and then to specifically address that person or those small groups of people that are driving that gun violence. And that takes a multi-agency law enforcement approach to do that. So of course, multi-agency approaches are really, really important. And we have people at the table every week that have never been at the table together all in one space. So our shooting reviews actually have over 50 people, normally 50 to 60 people from multiple law enforcement agencies in order to address this gun violence reduction. Also, it takes an aligned network of community-based organizations which provide individualized, culturally responsive, diverse, age-appropriate services to the folks who need the most help and are at highest risk of being offenders or being victims of gun violence in our city. And it also takes grassroots folks who have been doing a lot of social justice work in our city for most of their lives to be able to weigh in and have a voice and be able to act on that voice in the work that they do in the community and align with the reduction of gun violence. So the components that are most important to our program are data. We have to be very transparent with the data on the gun violence. We're preparing a problem analysis as I speak for release to the public. And shooting reviews, we have them weekly, and they're a multi-agency review of the gun violence that happened in the week immediately preceding that. The district attorney's office actually facilitates that shooting review right now, and it's a partnership with APD. and they both present different parts of and different layers of what's happening with shootings and with firearm arrests in the city. Also, peer services. Peer services are also very, very critical to the program because people with lived experience are really able to connect with the folks that we're trying to help change the trajectory of the way their lives are going. So we don't want them to be offenders in the future, and we don't want them to be victims in the future. We want them to be productive members of their community so their community starts to heal. And Angel Garcia will be talking about that in a few minutes. And then custom notifications. Custom notifications are a phenomenal tool that's worked really well. It was the first part of this program that was implemented. That implementation began in March of this year with staff at APD. In May of this year, our case manager came on who has lived experience. And then in June of this year, I came on as program manager. So that's kind of the timeline of the implementation. And I'm going to ask Commander Langwood to speak a little bit about custom notifications and give you some data on how that's working. Commander?
Thank you, Jerry. Madam Chair, councilors, good evening. My name is Luke Langwood. I'm a commander of the Criminal Enforcement Division for APD. Quick background on myself. I spent pretty much all my career working in investigations where I did narcotics, and then I went to SWAT. So my whole career has been involved in enforcement. So with a program like this was new to me, but seeing the success that we could have, and it's not going to be an overnight success, but as long as we stay the course and do our due diligence, I'm sure that we will see a reduction in the violent crime. As Jerry had talked about the custom notifications, we have gone out on 66 of them. We just did 4 yesterday. And I'd just like to throw out an interesting stat that I think is a success in itself. Out of these 66 interventions or interactions that we've had with these individuals, we've only had 1 instance of recidivism, where one of the individuals that we talked to, he was involved in another gun violence incident. He wasn't the shooter, but he was involved in another one. So I look at that 66 to 1, and I definitely know that we have prevented future shootings with the interactions that we've done. So what is a custom notification? Just a real quick overview. I know one of the counselors had mentioned earlier about the law is the law. And that's where I don't want people to get confused, but at the end of the day, as law enforcement, our fundamental responsibility is to advocate for victims. So when a law is broken and where we have a victim that is a person, there will be enforcement all the way up until a successful prosecution. We'll do everything that we can to make sure that there is a successful prosecution. What we've done with the VIP program, though, is to look at and identify individuals that aren't facing charges, that they may have been a victim or a witness of a shooting event, right? Or they may be an associate or a peripheral individual linked to someone that was involved in a shooting. And we look at these individuals to where we may be able to identify based on the incidents that they're being present at or the history that they have, where it would not be a surprise if 2 weeks from now they're involved in a shooting. So we're looking at individuals that, again, they're part of the most vulnerable parts of our community of the population, very small portion of the population, but we're looking at these individuals, and that's who we go out and we talk to and we deliver the VIP custom notification, which is very, very, it's a simple, easy message, but it does have a profound effect with them, especially when they hear it from myself as a law enforcement officer. They've never heard it from police before, but then also someone like Angel who has that lived experience. It's letting them know that they are part of the community. We want them safe, and we explain the penalties. And we don't want to see them killed, hurt, or incarcerated. And we let them know of the potential penalties if they're involved in a future gun violence incident. And that's really the law enforcement component and that moral community message. The second part is the social outreach, where a lot of the resources, and I'll let Angel talk to this, but a lot of the resources that are out there that people just don't know about, where Angel does a great job of plugging them into it. But again, with the custom notifications that we've done, it's only going to grow and expand. And the more people that we identify, I think this approach with other initiatives that we have, just speaking on the law enforcement side, like our anti-crime initiative and other enforcement strategies, I think with the combination of all of them, we'll definitely see a reduction in violent crime, and it is also improving our legitimacy with our with the community. Thank you.
And then Angel Garcia will speak to some of his work and his role in the VIP program, and then we'll be open to questions.
Madam Chair, councilors, how you guys doing? So as mentioned, I'm the one on the team with the lived experience. I was a gang member in Los Angeles for over 20 years, and I do have prison experience under my belt as well. And for me, the message is simple. I know what it's like to face obstacles when you're trying to change your life. And I'm here to be the barrier breaker for them. I plug them into the services that they need. And not to take up too much more time, I just want to give you guys an example. The other day, we did a custom notification on a gentleman who's 39 years old. He was recently shot, and he admitted that he was just waiting to get better from his wounds so that he could go retaliate. But we knocked on his door before that happened. So he said it's been about 7 years now that change has been on his mind. He just didn't know how to go about it. And he was grateful that we knocked on his door that day. And to his astonishment, I'm heavily tattooed just as he is. So that's what piqued his interest. He's like, how are you involved in this? And you look exactly like I do. So that connection there was immediate. I'm heavily tattooed everywhere from head to toe too. So that connection was strong, and now he checks in with me every day. He had an infection, so right now we're working on getting that taken care of. But after that, we're getting ready to enroll him at CNM. He's going to start his educational path, and just a couple of weeks ago, retaliation was on his mind. So that goes to show the need for this program, and people are very well responsive to the message, especially like Commander Langwood said. When they hear a highly decorated officer from APD tell them, hey, look, we care about you. We don't want to see you dead or in prison. That kind of, it makes them think, it kind of takes them back, And a lot of people living that lifestyle haven't heard that we care about you too much in their life, and coming from a police officer, I think it means a lot to them. Thank you.
If anybody, that concludes our presentation and our update. If anybody would like to ask any questions, we're open to that.
Thank you so much for that, Ms. Bachicha, Commander Langwood, and Mr. Garcia. This program was actually brought to my attention by someone who used to utilize the program, and also it was mentioned across calls where I was on a call with a nationwide program. So I just want to say this is on a lot of people's minds, and that's how it was brought to my attention. And so I really do appreciate this presentation. We do have a counselor lined up for a question, so I'll go to Counselor Davis, and then if anyone else has questions, I'll entertain mine. So Counselor Davis.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Jerry and Angel, for joining us. You already know a big Jerry fan, and have recently had a chance to spend a few moments with Angel and talk about some of this. So I do think of all the things that we're working on in 2 $200 million PD budget and, you know, multiple tens of millions of dollars in family community budget. I think this is the thing that has the potential to have the most long-term impact in changing dynamics. And so I'm really excited to see this. And Jerry, I wonder if you can tell me, I know there was a meeting on Friday, I believe, with some of the groups in the International District in particular, and I think there may be some other sort of community advisory councils, for lack of a better term, about sort of what are next steps. And one of the things we've heard from the administration was that there was funding available to support community efforts like around restorative justice or community organizations that wanted to get engaged in mentorship or intervention. Can you give us an update on sort of what funding is still available for community groups and what, really quickly, what's the level of engagement on the ground right now with, say, like in the International District where we're trying to build that pilot program?
Great. Councilor Davis, thank you very much for asking those questions. We have a lot of next steps, and honestly, we're moving many different things together at the same time because this is literally a matter of life and death. So we really need to push this hard, push this quickly, but intentionally. We need to start small and build. And so with the community, the first thing that we're doing is creating a community awareness of the program. And I've received statistics from the police department, the Real-Time Crime Center, that I've been, presenting at meetings. But also I've been meeting with small groups in the community, individual advocates, and community-based organizations, as has Commander Langwit and Angel Garcia. And we've been increasing the awareness of this program and the challenges involved in reducing gun violence in Albuquerque. That's always the first part of community readiness. We're also implementing a community readiness assessment in the Southeast. We're using youth interns from the RAD program. The RAD program manager isn't here, but that's the Rapid Accountability Diversion Program from APD. Those youth are beginning to interview folks from across the Southeast that may or may not know how about our program, and that will determine the level of readiness of that community and where we should go next. It's a very detailed program. And so as far as funding, when we have some plans, we do have funds that we can actually allocate or procure to the communities. We're also working in the Southwest to with another community group there to implement that community readiness assessment, and so that we can prioritize the first places that we move forward in the community, so that the community can enhance its own safety as well as work in conjunction with the police department to reduce gun violence. And so those are the steps that we're working right now. We're also going to be having a large all-in, VIP all-in community-based organization gathering in December, where we're going to invite all the community-based organizations that are willing to be all in for our VIP clients. From there, we'll have monthly meetings to work with those organizations on an ongoing basis to make sure that our clients are supported in the way that they need to be. And that's really critical because our clients need help now, and they can't wait even more than 24 hours for a call back from services. And the services need to be responsive culturally as well as age appropriate. And we have to be willing, the community-based organizations have to be willing to overcome challenges that they don't have to overcome with some of the other clients that they work with. Our clients have a lot of different challenges than than other clients that they've seen. So those are the types of things that we're moving forward on.
Thanks, Jerry. And I've prolonged this meeting long enough today. So just very quickly, if you could tell us sort of those next steps are absolutely critical. I know the need is urgent and you guys are working very quickly. Do you have a ballpark on sort of timeline of, I didn't realize you're bringing everybody together in December, but when you'll be onboarding those organizations, do you think, to your plan with resources so they can begin sort of spreading the gospel out into the community? I think that's the question we're getting from the community groups. They have been doing a lot of planning. I think they're just really anxious to try to figure out when they can get started, and if you could help us give some guidance on what that timeline looks like. And thank you, Madam Chair. I'll yield after the response. Thanks.
Right, the community-based organizations and the community groups that we're working with, we need to have that plan first. And so that's why the community readiness assessment is so important. And so in order to procure funds, you know, there's been a lot of individual programs that have been funded within the communities over the years, but they need to align now with a larger strategic plan. They need to, you know, definitely be assessed for some sort of impact. And we need to have, you know, we have the funds to be able to support them. We also are working with some grant folks to make sure that we're able to support them beyond the initial planning stage and the initial implementation stage, so that they have a long time to be able to sustain their work, build on their work, do quality assurance, and continue to improve their work so that the gun violence reduction is sustained in those communities. And that is not something that has happened before. So we have to be intentionally different in how we approach this strategy and make sure that we're not just throwing money out into the community for individual projects that may not align and we may not be able to sustain for long periods of time, because that may help one or two individuals and that's always worth it. But we do want to help everybody in the communities now and really sustain that reduction. I hope that's making some sense.
All right, counselors, any questions? Well, I think you pretty much answered mine. I think moving forward, a lot of community members were just curious as to where the progress of VIP was at, and you know, really how they can chip in and participate. So it sounds like, from my understanding, it's really doing that assessment and being there in December so that that they can be all in with other groups. I would love to keep updated on that, especially in the meeting in December. I would love to participate in a way that I can. Again, I mean, this program is really making strides and movements, having brought to my attention by people who have been in the program and also in national organizations in trying to address gun violence. So I really appreciate all the work that you're doing along with Mr. Garcia and Commander Langwit. I really appreciate the three of you for being on and sharing really this incredible work that you're doing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to say that we are hiring a staff member to take on the community work as well. It is a little hard. It is a very large program with multiple moving parts that take, you know, a lot of work. And so to implement it properly, we've been granted 2 other full-time positions. One is a data analyst position, and the other one is a special projects kind of manager position, so that we can push it out even quicker. There are so many people that want to be part of this program, and Angel and I and Luke cannot get out into the community enough and talk to everybody and then rally everybody around that one goal, move forward together. We need some help, and so that's in the works and should be coming very, very shortly.
Thank you so much for that update. I do really appreciate it, and I hope to support this program whatever way I can. So thank you so much. And that was the last item on our agenda. If councilors don't have anything else, I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.